Hey, welcome to podcast number 16 in Luke on Location. We're glad that you take the time to listen to these. We hope that you're blessed, and maybe we throw some things out that cause you to think about stuff. So we are today, in our travels through Israel and the life of Jesus, it's Thursday. He's in and out of Jerusalem. He's up and down the Mount of Olives. All these things are coming together towards the end of his life and the plan to offer himself as a sacrifice for us. But let's pause before we jump into that story, and let's talk about traveler's fatigue. Israel traveler's fatigue.
What day were we in? What day was that when we were there? How many days were into the trip were we?
Do
you know?
5.
5 or 6, yeah.
It was near the end.
Yes.
Yeah.
We went at a fast clip, daybreak to late into the night.
One of those days I just laid down.
Literally, I have a picture of that. Yes.
I was done. Yeah. I was roasted.
So you go to place after place after place, and you're trying to absorb and synthesize, and we added to that the complexity of trying to teach and communicate in the midst of learning. What were you thinking by the time we really get into the heart of Israel?
Well, I think you kind of alluded to it a little bit ago.
Yeah, I everything started to run together. I felt like my videos that I did kept becoming the same thing over and over. Maybe they weren't. I don't know, but they felt
for
like
you they were.
I felt like they kept being the same thing over and over. It's just a different backdrop behind me. But yeah, you cram in that much stuff in that short amount of time, everything starts to run together. It looks the same. You're tired of crowds. And I think this was about the day where it really started to set in for me.
Yeah, because Jerusalem is tense, and
Yeah.
it's wound tight, and
We'd walked 15 miles the day before.
yeah, and it was the day before we dealt with all of the Trump peace issues
Mm-hmm.
that were the repercussions of that in Jerusalem and Bethlehem when they shot people after we left, and all of that rubber bullets.
They were rubber bullets.
Yes.
To the NSA officer watching this.
And all of that stuff. So we were looking for this location, chapter 22.
For a long time.
It wasn't that bad.
We walked all over the city to find the upper room.
No, Jeff was actually looking for a food truck. He wasn't actually
Falafel?
We found some food, and then here it is.
The Upper Room Cafe.
There's usually that guy that has the Jerusalem bagels that are stuffed with fig right there at the top. I was looking for that.
You found
Holy
it?
Bagel?
Holy bagels.
Oh, that was a good place.
I like that
That was
place.
Holy
No,
Bagel.
this is the street side guy.
Oh.
You got to go
This
in
is
the
a different
morning
bagel.
because the flies are on them by afternoon. It's gross. But
There's bread everywhere in
morning's
Israel.
cool.
We did hit a really good bagel spot inside the old city of Jerusalem. We went there a couple times.
I can say
Lox-
Fred
Lox
smelled
and
it
bagels.
out.
Yes.
Yeah. Fred
Yes.
smelled it
Yes.
I had that for breakfast one day, and I was not hungry until the next day.
out. Yeah, it was like a 1 pound bagel. It was awesome.
Yeah, it
Which
was.
it would be interesting to find out how many pounds of bread we ate, specifically Blumker.
That's something I don't want to
Blumker
talk
lived
about.
on bread.
I went from keto to carbs in one swoop. It was crazy.
It wasn't.
It wasn't good.
Well, we are on the. That's not where I intended to go, but let's reel it back in.
That's why you're here.
Southern side of the temple wall, that famous visual, southern steps where we've done a lot of this discussion. The city of David is where we're at here. It's the peninsula of that central hill of Jerusalem. And somewhere on that, we knew was the upper room. I knew the stairway was present, that Roman road that's there. I suppose we'll probably do a podcast about that, Galacunte, right?
Yeah.
Peter's denial.
A couple
right?
weeks.
Couple weeks. So I knew that was there, and then the difficulty with the upper room is they have also moved the tomb of David there. I say moved because I don't think it's the proper location for it, but that's where they currently celebrate it. We went actually to where I think was the proper location. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
After we exited Hezekiah's tunnel, we went around to that place and
It was in a lady's backyard.
Yes.
literally.
Literally
There's like
in
a
her
playground, Tomb of David.
Yep.
It was like a kid swing, Tomb of David.
Yeah.
It was
And tour
crazy.
groups don't go there. That was obvious, but
You
the
can
dead
see
rat
why.
that was still in the
Yeah,
tomb.
you can see why they don't.
Yeah, but that I think is probably the family tombs of David. I credit Fred Hastings on really putting us on to discover that through some video and some connection he he helped us figure out where that was. So we went to the real tomb of David, but that kind of the tomb of David they have now kind of makes it confusing. You're in an area that's really developed, lots of buildings, lots of walled streets, and so it's hard to see where you're at to gain a good perspective.
Yeah, it's like a rat maze
yeah
through
and
there.
obviously, the upper room that Jesus was in is not still there, but is it in the right location? That's a big debate. One of my favorite archaeological teachers, I watched his video that Joel Kramer, he deals with that building we were in, and I guess in the 70s there was an excavation of that and a restoration of that place, and in the first century there was Christian graffiti on location
Mhm.
there.
Hmm.
And he argues that the niche, that's the place that they in a synagogue would put the scroll of the Old Testament law. The niche in that building, which you can look out the windows and see where the temple was, does not face the temple. And we didn't go into that back room. It's a synagogue now, a Jewish synagogue. Do you remember the guys were in there?
Yeah,
doing that?
yeah.
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 So that's the downstairs
Mhm.
of the upper room. It's a synagogue now. That niche doesn't face the temple, though you can see it out the wall. So they did, as obviously an intentional turning of it, and it actually, if you could look through the city walls, it faces the Church of the Holy Sepulchre.
Hmm.
And his argument was that was the upper room. It was also the first church location, day of Pentecost,
Mhm.
Hmm.
when the Spirit came down. So
That's
I
good.
don't know
That's
why
really
did-
cool.
Why didn't I tell you that when we were there?
I think you
don't
did
know.
because I remember you saying that. We talked about that while we were there.
Okay, traveler fatigue.
Yeah,
I-
all of our videos sounded the same. Yours did not.
Moving on. All right. So we are in the Luke chapter 22. Familiar story. The upper room, the Last Supper,
Famous painting.
famous painting. Da Vinci immortalized this scene for us. So
Mhm.
we're going to pick it up at the end of 21. I think it sets the scene for where we're at. Each day Jesus was teaching at the temple, and each evening he went out to spend the night on the hill called the Mount of Olives, and all the people came early in the morning to hear him at the temple. So he rides in the triumphal entry, and then he spends the week going in and out of the temple teaching, and really causing quite a stir. The crowds are gathering around him to hear what he's got to say, and I think it'd be on Tuesday morning, he cleared the temple,
Mhm.
and he talks about the destruction of the temple, and then this is Thursday that we're jumping to, and of course Friday's coming. Now the feast of unleavened bread, called the Passover, was approaching, and the chief priests, these guys are supposed to be the religious spiritual leaders.
Mhm.
This is just, the irony of this is striking. The chief priests and the teachers of the law were looking for some way to get rid of Jesus. Why? For they were afraid of the people. What's that all about?
Power, position, prestige.
I think it's interesting. It says
Control.
that they're afraid of the people. I think that's one of the lines that strikes me right there.
Well, because they can see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a shift of culture. Like it's a
Their religious system is about to be overrun. The thing is, their solution to it is actually what does it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Verse 3 is a troubling one. I want to parallel that with verse 31 as we move through this story. It's because we're talking about Judas here. It says that Satan entered Judas. Yeah, all these scenes the other writers have been sharing with us. Of course, this is written post end of story for Judas. John tells us that the reason he wanted Mary to not anoint Jesus with the alabaster jar of nard was because he wanted to sell and give to the poor. Well, John says it's because he was helping his hand to the purse and stealing, right? Judas is here. And you look over in verse 31, it's Simon, 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 Satan has asked to sift you like wheat. Jesus says to him, that's Peter. So we got two guys who are going to deny Christ in this story real soon. Judas takes the money, the pieces of silver, and betrays Jesus. Peter says 3 times in our story at Galacunte that I don't know him. And Peter's, well, we love that story. Really reinstated later. That'll be another podcast. Man, aren't you excited about the future? All these things we're building. We're gonna talk about all these awesome things. Peter's reinstated, but after he weeps bitterly, right? And Judas hangs himself. And that field, you guys remember this? In that valley, there at the end of where we were. Remember when we went to that lady's backyard where the tombs of David were? If you would turn around and look south, there's a little bit of a valley there. There's a desolate field there. There's still to this day nothing in that. That's what they used, the money that Jesus threw back at them to buy. They bought that field. And that's where Judas hung himself.
Wow. I mean, I wouldn't want to buy that land.
Who wants to live there?
It's like naming your kid Judas, too. I'm just saying, like, not a good idea.
Yeah.
That's a funny illustration to use.
In my brain right now, I try to think, do I know any kids who just really got ticked?
Nobody watching this podcast.
Canceled.
Jeez.
So what's the difference in the two guys?
2020.
What do you think's the difference? I think that's an important lesson for
Well,
us.
so as you were reading that, something else just jumped out at me. Okay, so Judas actually like says, "Here's Jesus," right? So he's pointing like saying, "Hey, here he is." I'm giving him his location up, saying, "Yeah, he is."
His denial is by identifying.
I know, and Peter's is actually by denying
him.
who. Yeah, and so I think that's interesting. But yet their responses are then the exact opposite. There's guilt, shame, and fear of like, "Oh no," in Judas, and he hangs himself without repentance. And you see that Peter actually comes back and is restored. So I think the response there is
there's a
huge.
lot of theories about these guys, and particularly about Judas and why he did what he did, besides just greed. But I think for the point of application for people to really wrestle with is, we all do the same thing, one way or another, sometime or another. We in our life deny Jesus. And how do we respond to that guilt?
Mhm.
That's a big deal.
So one of the things I saw, Facebook, right? So this is good.
It's got to be true.
I'm probably going to use it in the sermon too. Is when you're in trouble, do you say, "Uh-oh, my dad's going to be, really mad," or you say, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. I need to call my dad." There's a response there of like, when we sin, is it like, "Oh, geez, God's going to just beat me down and, I got to earn my way back," or is it like, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble"? Do you run to the Father because you know that like he can solve the problems?
And it just depends on what I did.
I know, right?
I remember Mom saying, "Go to your room till your dad gets home."
That was not a good.
Oh, that was the worst.
Yeah, that was not like a mercy moment.
No.
No, it's judgment's coming.
Yeah.
Were you guys the kind of kids where, like, I don't know if you can say this on the internet in 2020, but like the spanking, was that what made you afraid of your dad, or was it the words?
I only got the belt one time.
Did you?
Yeah, that was it.
I think
That was enough.
my dad may watch this
I
and
never
say
really
that this
did
was
anything
full of it.
wrong, but
I was a perfect child. So.
I'll tell you the story, man.
Uh-oh.
The one time I recall being spanked, and it only took one, my dad flipped out like a madman because I was in the living room floor, and my mom told me to do something, and I said, "Shut up."
Oh, that's a bad
Yeah,
move.
that'll do it.
Oh, man. It was bad. She finally had to tell him to stop. He just
I've
flipped.
shaken Gary's hand. That's a paw.
Dude, it wasn't his hand though. Somehow or another, in one moment, I flipped, pants down,
Oh man.
on his lap. And he's got his belt off, and I got the belt whipping.
Mm-hmm.
All in one. It was one.
Like you didn't even know what happened.
Watch you.
Yeah.
Oh, I know what happened. I never told my mom to shut up again.
That's probably a good call.
Yeah. Ooh, it still gets. I'm sweating.
He's uncomfortable right now. Just in
I'm
case
hoping
Gary
my dad
watches.
doesn't watch this. He might get mad again. He still could do it too.
Yeah, he could. I was the kind of kid where if all my dad had to do was look at me, and I was immediately, I knew it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, the idea that I had disappointed my parents was way worse than
Yeah,
whatever
ultimately,
punishment.
that becomes the motive.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's a terrible thing. That look of you've embarrassed me or whatever. That's terrible.
Do you
Say
think-
what you said again off
Yeah.
of the truthful Facebook source.
Oh yeah. So when you get in trouble, is it I'm in trouble? My dad's gonna kill me or whatever, or is your response I'm in trouble? I need to call my dad.
So that's the difference in a person who lives by religion
Mm-hmm.
or relationship. Yeah, to know you've broken the heart of the Father, and your sin is part of what caused Jesus to die for you, or you don't want to go to hell.
Mm-hmm.
Cat and dog theology, I used to call that. Cats use you, dogs love you. Yeah, that's good stuff. So the big key there, though, is with I think the difference ultimately amongst the two guys, and there's a lot of detail that's different too, but Judas kind of lived in this deceptive life for a while, and Peter in a moment makes a decision that matters,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's one thing to enter into a lifestyle setting where you're continually putting yourself at risk of sin and sinning.
Well, and justifying the sin.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I think that's the big thing is when you participate in sin over and over again, you begin to justify, well, it's not that bad. It's not really
Yeah.
that big of a deal.
Can I wander out into a subject application that I think might really tick some people off? I think it's perfect thought is it's this idea of couples moving in together, and there's it's not to say that the only couples that sleep together are the couples that move in together. That we know that's not true, and not to say that either one's worse sin. But when you accept the fact that you're going to continue to live in sin, it's different than sinning in the sense of how your heart reacts in repentance.
Yeah.
And the key issue there is repentance. Both are sin, and we're all sinners, falling short of the glory of God. We know that. Not to be throwing rocks of condemnation in that regard, but what you do with sin is a big deal.
Well, ultimately, it's a callousing of the heart. Is because you're right, we're all fallen and we all fall short of the glory of God. But when we continually to choose to participate, live in sinful actions or whatever, it calluses our hearts to the point of like, I'm not that bad, or whatever.
Well, it blinds you.
Exactly.
I mean,
And Jesus,
and it doesn't take very long. We can make a good excuse
right?
to justify our behavior.
Well, and,
Yep.
and even to that specific thing, most, at least if they're talking to us, most people that are in that know, but there is a callousing because when they say it, there's almost this shame that comes with it. But the callous comes in is that, but I'm also not willing to do anything about it.
Mm-hmm.
You
So
know?
you can see that with
it's
Judas.
really not that
Yeah,
bad.
You can see
Yeah.
that with Judas because he's been taking money out of the treasury, right? Taking money out of the treasury. And over time, the deception has changed the way he looks at people. It changes the way he looks at Mary and her act of worship when she poured the perfume on Jesus. And it's interesting to me that that's what Satan uses ultimately to make him make the big fall,
Mm-hmm.
right? But look what he had probably given up to follow Jesus. They don't have an income. They're living day to day, moment to moment. And so he could probably easily say, I don't have a paycheck. Unemployment here is not too good.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus is, this is how God's providing. I'll
Right.
take this and use it. And pretty soon he finds himself fully immersed in sin and hangs himself. Didn't mean to go there with this part of the story, but I think it's an interesting element of it, the repentance, because these guys were both in the room.
Yeah.
That's what's crazy. That room's not that big, right? We were in the upper room. Tell them a little bit about that. Once we finally found it.
I think we went into somebody's
20
house
minutes.
the first time.
There's like
You
a
know.
desk and
Yeah.
computer.
And we went in with other people. That was the thing. We were behind them and walk up this staircase and
So
we get up there.
that's the way they have established this now to manage crowd control in and out of the upper room. Because I questioned that when we went there on tour groups a couple months later. And they have reorganized that. So you do now go through that house,
So we went in the exit.
Yes.
That's what it was. Yes.
basically.
Yes.
But you go through that house so to control people flow.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And you could see why. It was crazy in there, wasn't it?
I
It
think
was crazy.
whenever we got in there, it wasn't terrible, but when we left, it was insane.
Actually, there was no one in there when we got in there. If you
Yeah,
remember,
there was very few, if any.
People didn't
yeah.
come in until you started recording your video.
Yeah.
And then
And it was
one
crazy.
lady just
She come
she
and
just
got
followed
between-
you.
You too
She
did
got
your
between
video.
him and his phone. She said,
She was right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. She made a guest appearance.
I felt like I was talking to her.
was it that location where one of us did a video and we had all the equipment out? And everybody, when you get all the equipment out, there's people, they think you're real professionals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. And so they're all like, oh, shit.
None of them spoke our language.
Pretty cool. So we go into the room. It's
It's a mosque now, right?
been a mosque.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they tore it out of a lot of the symbolism of the Christian movements and the rebuilding and all that. But
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Just once again, like Jerusalem is just a paradigm type city where
Mhm.
you have Christian, Muslim, Jew, like Palestinian, all these different things just crushed together. And the upper room was one of those, which I was also thinking about too. Is like, so Jesus institutes the new covenant here of how we're going to relate to God and how He's going to be the sacrifice. And today, even like you see all these different culture symbolisms and what that room has been. And you just think about like Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and life. No man comes to me except, or no one comes to the Father except through me. But yet it's for all people. And I just think that's a really interesting dynamic.
such a contrast to that ideology that says, I conquer the people, I need to eradicate the emblems of their
Mm-hmm.
faith. What's going on in our country right now, too. Kind of scary. Wipe out things of the past so you can have a new ideology. That's what's happening. So we got Judas there, we got Peter there, we got the disciples there, we got the preparations made for the Passover meal. And I would like to just for a moment talk about this Seder idea that we're participating in, or encouraging people to participate in. We've got a written guide, a printed up guide. It's
really good.
Yeah, simple. Got a contents list, a supplies list. This is a family meal, and Jesus and his disciples are essentially celebrating this together as a family.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant to be something complicated. I don't know that what we have in our guide is exactly what they did outside of the bread and the lamb, right, which are consistent with the two things when you go all the way back to the Exodus that God gave instruction for Moses and the people to participate in when they left Egypt. So you got the Last Supper. They're I don't know that they're going to do bitter herbs and salt water, and they do hand washing, which is part of theirs, and we do that. But let me encourage people. You guys you went through one, Matt?
2 of them, yeah.
2, and you have Andrew. Have you done it?
I've been through one. Yep.
Particularly people who attend the campus in Clay County. I don't know that many of them have participated.
I may be the only one.
Yeah.
I think that was before.
It's 2015.
Yeah, so it would have been. We may
Before
have
you
had
became
some
a
here.
Christian.
Yeah, that's what did it. No, it was probably before anybody was here. So yeah, it's powerful. It really is. So
There's probably a few people that probably
There
were
could
still
be.
around.
there could be.
Yeah, but it is a really a cool opportunity to slow down.
So yeah, if you're a family, if you're not in a life group, you can do this as a family. I think it would be a great worship experience. And the resources online too, on the resources tab on the website, and you could open that up. But it's just things to read, things to think about as you make your way through the whole meal. You don't have to do lamb, although that is probably one of the few things that's actually specifically was a part of their meal.
It's also, and I don't want to you speak into this, but I don't want to speak for you, but I think it's a really cool opportunity if you're not in a group to be a part of it in a group.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to try a group out that's doing it, it'd be great to do it with somebody.
Oh, absolutely. And
So
I think most of our groups are going to be participating in it because
Cool.
I've been talking to them. They're all gearing up for that. So
Right. I got a message from my group leader that asked what day, because we offered to host.
Mhm.
We would smoke goat instead, but
I don't
Yeah,
think that's.
yeah.
but my wife doesn't know that. I got a goat that's been eating my cypress tree around the pond.
You gonna bring
Oh.
it inside?
Huh?
Bring it inside for a few days. It already
You know,
is your pet.
The sad thing is he was raised in our house for 2 weeks.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, it's that goat.
It's that
Oh
goat.
man, we were talking about that goat on the
I think
podcast.
I think spiritually, although it's a goat, not a lamb, a lot of the implications are similar.
Yeah, I
I don't
agree.
think you should tell her.
I want to do it as an act of worship.
Don't tell her till after the meal.
What's the goat's name?
Judas.
Oh man.
Cocoa bean. So,
This is the
anyway.
best cocoa I've ever had. What?
I think he'd be like chewing on shoe leather. Yeah. So anyway, let me encourage you though. I think it's just a great opportunity for you to do something, and especially if you haven't returned to worship gatherings, this would be a great way for you to do a worship thing at your house with some close friends or something. So grab a hold of that resource and do it. There's videos and all kind of stuff that Levi Schrock linked to it that will explain everything. So good stuff. So that's what when he says go and make preparations for the Passover. That's what they're doing. They're getting all this stuff together. They found their cocoa and they go to the upper room, right? They go to the upper room, and all that is laid out for us. I don't know that we need to jump into the detail, or is there things that you guys would like to share about what they do in that meal that's significant?
No, I don't want all my thunder to be stolen.
Yeah.
But
I was just thinking about you guys were talking about a few minutes ago the different responses that happen here.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know about you guys, but one of the things that I always think about right before I'm getting ready to walk out on a weekend to teach is those are the two groups of people that are also in the room.
Mm.
Like there are people that are going to hear it, embrace it, and do their best to live it, and there are people that are going to hear it and they're going to harden their heart towards it. And so, yeah, this story may be 2,000 years old, but it's real every day for people,
mhm.
including all of us.
Well, yeah. Just for instance, I was reading in verse 23. They're not just Simon, Peter, and Judas. They're standing out in the crowd, obviously, because of their actions. But there's a dispute amongst the disciples. While Jesus is washing their feet and laying out this new covenant for them, who's going to be the greatest in it? What does that tell you?
Didn't get it.
They don't get it. Yeah, they think this is their moment. They are vying for the highest position in the cabinet, right? Who's going to be the VP pick?
And isn't it interesting that dispute comes on the heels of him saying that one of them is going to betray him?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it starts with one of you is jacked up, and they are basically arguing, well, it's not going to be me because I'm the greatest of all of us. It's just it's a weird paradox how that conversation comes about.
But we do that too, man.
Oh yeah,
We do.
I'm not as bad as that guy.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesus has this powerful moment with these guys, and all this dynamic is coming, and it's Thursday night. And the Pharisees are rallying the troops, and we're going to leave it off at this, but he takes them and they head out to the Mount of Olives to pray. Wow, and it's about to get real.
Friday's coming. So is Sunday, though.
All right. Well, a lot of stuff to dig into. That's Luke chapter 22, first part of it at least, and can't wait to see you in worship as we talk about this a little more fully. This is a powerful time.